Hi everybody, I'm Tabitha and today we're talking nano. So if you are part of the online writing or reading community, you may have heard the term nano a lot. Maybe you've even seen it in print, usually capital N's and nothing else capitalized. But what does that actually mean? Well, November is known as National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo, when you shorten it. In fact, most of us shorten it all the way down to nano, at least I know that I do, because it's easier than that entire mouthful. Basically, the idea behind nano is to try to write 50,000 words of a novel in 1 month. Now, why they picked November, which happens to be the month with Thanksgiving and travel and Black Friday shopping and only 30 days, I have no idea. I mean, I guess we should just be glad they didn't pick February that only has 28 days, right? There were definitely better choices, but for whatever the reason, November is National Novel Writing Month. So today, we're going to talk about my history with Nano. We're going to talk about this year's project and how it's going so far, and I'm going to drop a few tips for those of you who might be nanoing right along with me. Ready? Let's go. So I think we should start this video with one quick little important tip that you're going to see repeated over and over again throughout this entire video. And that is, although it sounds like it does, the biggest thing for you to remember is that Nano has no real rules. You do what works for you to get words written on that story. So in that same vein, I do want to tell you there is a website, NaNoWriMo.org. And if you happen to sign up and pledge your project and tell us what it is on NaNoWriMo.org, you should definitely add me as a friend. You can find me capital T, capital S, but it's T ships. So you can find me there and you'll find my history of doing Nano. My history of doing Nano kind of works like this. In 2014, I had just decided that I wanted to give a shot to this whole writer thing. I had lots of ideas and lots of started projects, but I really wanted to focus on one and try to make this happen. So in 2014, I signed up for NaNoWriMo and pledged to do Royal Blood, which was a young adult fantasy that I did finish in 2014 in the month of November. I put on the site that I wrote all like 99,000 words of that book in November. It's not entirely true. All these years later, I couldn't tell you how many of the words I wrote, but I know it was more than 50,000. But I went into that with kind of a start of a working draft, and I sort of did the edit and then finished it in that month of November. So I got my first win, my first year of doing Nano in 2014. Fun fact, that story later became known as Breaking Iselda and was my first published novel. So I guess that's like a huge NaNoWriMo success. 2015, I tried NaNoWriMo again using the story 30 Days Without Wings, also a young adult fantasy story, and I lost epically. I think I wrote something like 12,000 words on that story as opposed to the 50,000 you need to win at National Novel Writing Month. But I did a blog post back then, which I'll make sure I link in the description, about how I didn't think failing at Nano was really failing and that that was a terrible name for it. Honestly, because you wrote words on a story you wanted to write, and I don't know that that can ever be called failing. So I'm right there with you. I'm a published author and I have 5 books, but I failed Nano in 2015. And actually, you can now purchase 30 Days Without Wings. So can that really be called a failure? In 2019, I tried again with my young adult contemporary story. I did win at Nano, being able to write 50,000 words on the young adult contemporary in that month of November. Since then, I have gone on to finish that story. 50,000 wasn't enough to call that one done. It was just the start. I've gone on to finish that story, and right now it's sort of simmering. I feel like there's a slight problem with it. I don't think my theme was strong enough, so I'm going to come back to it, but I don't know that I'm in the right frame of mind to come back to it yet. So 2020 is my 4th time attempting Nano. Since that brings me to 2020's Nano, let's talk about this project. I've often said that being somebody who writes full-time, it almost feels like cheating to do National Novel Writing Month. But I don't write full novels in an entire month on a normal basis. So I also try to challenge myself by going outside my comfort zone as often as possible when I participate in things like this. So if you imagine, I have my funny little comfort zone and I'm stepping way outside of it for Nano. It's the same as somebody who never writes stepping into writing for Nano. So really, I'm as off kilter as people who've never done this before when I take on something brand new. I did that in 2019, taking on a contemporary story for the first time with no magic and no fantasy and no scientific elements to them. In 2020, I'm doing it again. I am a young adult author. All 5 of my published works are young adult. All of the ones that I've drafted and have edited or are working on or with betas, they're also young adult. But my 2020 National Novel Writing Month project is adult. In fact, it's drastically adult. It's a story about a hitman for hire and something that happens big in their life. I mean, it's adult. She's a dark main character who I'm having quite a blast writing, actually. In fact, I'm going to read you a little synopsis from this one, the summary, straight from my National Novel Writing Month description page. By the way, The Hitman is a working title. I hate that as much as most of you. Thanks for being honest on Twitter and telling me you hate it. I do too. You love the story idea, but I need a new title. I know, titles are not my forte. So here's the summary. Are you ready? Here we go. Regina King has found a way to make her obsession with death profitable on her terms as a killer for hire. She keeps her career choice locked away from her husband and separate from that life. Stuart Houston wants justice for his murdered sister. He knows who killed her, and he wants that person to pay. He doesn't want jail time in a cell with 3 meals a day. He wants revenge. He wants death. Regina King is just the person to give him that. The only problem? Regina King is also his sister's killer. So that's the summary for the story that I am working on for National Novel Writing Month in 2020. So as far as drafting this story goes, you probably already know this, but I'm a planner by nature, so I always do an outline. When I do an outline, they run chapter by chapter. I give myself what I wanted to happen in that scene on a real basic level. Some of my chapters say something really small, like something has to show time passed, because I don't know yet what that's going to be. Some of my chapters are like full-on paragraphs on my outline, because I can already visualize dialogue and important things and emotions for that scene. So my outlines are very unbalanced, I guess you could say. Some small, some large chapters. This outline had 25 chapter bullet points up on my draft as I'm going. I should say when it started, it only had 23. Since then, I've broken up and added 2 more chapters, and it currently has 25. I should probably mention that you're watching this 2 days later than I filmed it. So all the totals I'm giving you right now were from Sunday, the 8th, when I actually haven't done my NaNoWriting for the day. So hopefully I have more words than this. As of right now, I am currently drafting chapter 13, and I think I'm at like 12,000 words. So you can extrapolate that out and realize if I don't start beefing up my chapters a little, I'm not going to hit 50,000 words. If I were to keep these chapters the same length they are, right around 1,000 or 1,500 words each, and finish this out, I'm barely going to hit 30,000. So I'm realizing right now that I have a huge problem in that the chapters are too short. I think I'm almost rushing to get to the parts of the story that I kind of want to tell. And I realized the other day, the first 7 chapters are great. I feel like they're nice and beefy. They have a lot of detail. I'm doing a lot of show, not tell. And then I started rushing it. So what I might do, and I don't call it cheating, because remember I told you in the beginning, there are no real rules for Nano. Just get those words written. I think I might, like for today's word count, go back to chapter 8 and see where I can show, not tell, and add to that. I wouldn't call that editing. I'm talking about adding meat to the story because I realize my word count will be entirely too short. But as of right now, I'm still on outline. Chapter 13 still follows where it was supposed to be. So I've introduced Regina, my main character. She's really dark. She's very stoic. I totally love her. She's unlike anybody else I've ever written. She's really sarcastic. She's very matter of fact. She's going to tell it exactly like it is, but it's pretty clear she's leading a double life. You're not necessarily, you're not supposed to like her. She makes no qualms about the fact that she's a killer. That right in that first chapter, you know that. You know she kills people. She likes death. We know this. But I think there's part of her that we can almost relate to and like, which is a weird balance. It's a risk that I'm taking, but I say all the time that I love when authors take risks, so I'm kind of a fan of that. As of right now, chapter 13, we've had mild introductions to our antagonist. I was hinting at that in that summary that it is Stuart Houston. So this is also the first time I've had a project where it's okay to tell you who the antagonist is. That's usually a big secret. We've had mild introductions to Stuart. Nothing big yet. He hasn't come in big, which leads me to believe I'm going to have to bulk up the number of chapters coming. Because I'd like to build to that climax, stretch the climax out, and then get that following action going. I think right now in my outline, it's rushed. So outlines are rough sketches, and I think that's okay. Still on track. Project coming along great. So how am I doing that? Next up, I think I'm going to give you some tips in case you're nanoing with me. So stay tuned. All right, so here are my big tips if you're participating in National Novel Writing Month for the first time. We're already a week in, a little over a week in, so if you're finding yourself struggling with something specific that these tips don't really help with, please feel free to reach out. Remember, this is my 4th time doing Nano. I've had wins, I've had losses, so please make sure you drop a comment. Let me know what you're having trouble with, and I'd be more than happy to help you see if I can give you a tip to work your way through it. But here's my big tips. You ready? Tip number 1. Set aside a time that you're going to write. I don't know how fast you write. I know for me it takes anywhere between an hour and an hour and a half. I know I've heard some people say it takes more like 2 because they type a little slower. I type pretty fast. But it's important to know that you need to set aside the time. Don't stress about the words. So what I do is I write down the total number of words in my document before I start, and then I write for that hour and a half, whatever. I write the whole time. I don't ever look at the word count again. When my timer goes off or my time is up, I check my word count. Most of the time, I'm at or over my word count. If you're checking my Nano totals and following along, I've been anywhere between 1,650 all the way up to 1,800 and something because I don't write till I hit the word count. I write till that timer goes off. I will say, sometimes that timer goes off in the middle of a scene. That's okay. I stop and I pick it up the next day. Actually, that leads me right into tip number 2. Physically put a break for yourself on those scenes. So I've had a lot of writers tell me that the biggest problem for them is they finish a scene and they're like, yes, that's done. That scene was really weighing on me. I had to get it done today. They checked their word count. The scene was 700 words. It's not enough for the day, but that was your focus and the scene is done. So what do? My tip is physically give yourself a break. Pause your timer, get up, leave the computer, go get a drink, come back and sit down and now refocus yourself on the new scene. Okay, here's the next thing. Here's what I have to do. Because usually what we do is we celebrate. Yes, my scene was done. I'm done for the day. And we walk away. But for National Novel Writing Month, we have that target, right? That 1,650 something words we're trying to hit every day. I don't even know the words. Did you notice that? You probably do. Tell me in the comments. I don't even know the words. We're trying to hit that 1,600 something words. So sometimes that's more than one scene. The best way I found to do that is to physically give yourself a break or a reset and then come in and start that next scene. It really works for some of you, and I'd love to know if it works for you. My 3rd tip, keep moving. When I failed Nano, it was because I wasn't able to do this. You have to be able to skip a scene that you can't visualize. I literally put all capital letter notes to myself that say, come back to this and show time has passed. And I skip it because you have to be able to. The point is to keep moving and write more words on the story. And if that means I can't write my outline in order, fine. If it bothers you to do that, open a new document. So maybe you have a document that's chapters 1 through 5 because you didn't hit any snags. You have no idea how chapter 6 is going to go, but you know what's happening in 7. Skip it. Start a new document, call the new document chapter 7, and just write it. There are no rules for Nano. Just keep writing. So that's my biggest tip. Keep moving and write something every day. My next tip. Keep important notes about characters or places somewhere on a separate document. Mine's actually just off camera right here. This is my notes for Regina and Stuart and even Regina's husband, Henry. Their vital stats, I don't know how well you can see it, but their vital stats like their age, their height, their weight, their eye color, their hair color, things I decided when I was drafting. The reason I suggest you do this is because you cost yourself valuable time when you have to go back through your story and remember if you just said he was taller than she was, or she was blonde, or she had green eyes, or whatever. If you put the detail in, you got to keep it consistent. And you're going to waste a bunch of time going to look for that so that you can keep it consistent. So I keep it on a separate piece of paper. Anytime, I keep my pens right there. So if I type it out, I go, whoops, hold on, let me grab a pen, write it down. Because if it was important enough to mention it, I need to be able to keep that consistent all the way. I do have one of these electronic for most of my projects, because for most of my projects, time isn't a factor. But for National Novel Writing Month, we're trying to write 50,000 words in 30 days. You have to be able to get to this fast. So that's my tip. Write it down. Keep notes somewhere off the computer, on a piece of paper, or maybe on a separate device where you can grab them quickly without having to scroll or click around and waste time. My next tip, if you write an outline, use it, but please don't let it handicap you. This is a really big one. You have plotters like me who have these epic outlines going in, and it almost feels like we've totally handicapped ourselves with them. We keep thinking to ourselves, okay. I said the story had to go in this direction, so it doesn't matter that the story's leaning that way. I'm supposed to be going this direction. Don't do it. If you have to chuck your whole outline because that's where the story's going, follow where the story is going. That is the biggest piece of advice I can give anyone. Yes, an outline is cool. It gives you a roadmap. I've even heard from some people who are pantsers, right? They're flying by the seat of their pants. They don't like to have an outline. Say that they have little bullet points somewhere that they'd like to make sure they hit. That's an outline. But don't let it handicap you. Don't get hung up by it. I think just keep moving is always the big deal. On that same vein, I do want to say, don't be afraid to take multiple paths. This always blows people's minds when I suggest this. When they tell me, well, I have 2 ideas for my story and I still haven't decided which one's going to be better. Write them both. That's my advice. Open 2 separate documents. Call it ending A and ending B. I don't care what you call it. Write them both. Play it out. And they're like, but well, isn't that double word counts? Isn't that cheating? Yeah, there's no rules for Nano, so no, it's not cheating. Write them both. Sit down and flush out that plan where she chooses guy number 1. Or sit down and flush out that plan where she chooses guy number 2. How do you know? You won't know till you try it. Write both, count both words, whatever. And someday, like in December, when we're editing, we will figure it out then. Do not be afraid to write multiple paths. That is a huge piece of advice. And all of that brings me back around to what I told you was the most important piece of advice. Whether it seems like it or not, there are no rules for Nano. Do what works for you, add words to the project, and keep moving. Okay, so that's it for my big generic tips that I have about Nano, but I again want to remind you, you're not going to bother me. Whatever you have, if you have questions, or you just want to brag about your project, or you're hung up on something, or you have like, oh my gosh, I need a character name, whatever, drop it in the comments and then rally and let's help each other out and come up with these answers and these solutions, or even just go friend each other and support the projects. Definitely want to make sure we're supporting the other writers who read or people who are nanoing this month because, you know, writing is more fun with friends, right? Okay, my friends, that is it for me and my Nano 2020 update. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye!